Hello, and welcome to another episode from the desk of a Navy wife, where you may or may not hear my kiddos in the background. My name is Raina Worthy, and on this podcast, we like to dive deep into the unique challenges, triumphs, and experiences that come with being a military spouse. So kick back, relax, make that cup of coffee, or get that evening dinner ready, and just listen to me in the background. Hi everyone, I am beyond excited today to be interviewing Andrea Sager. She is from Andrea Sager Law and she has an organization called the Legalpreneur. She's going to be sharing a little bit of insight when it comes to trademarking for our entrepreneurs out there and our military spouses that are starting a business. So I'm going to hand the floor over to her so she has some time to talk a little bit more about her organization and also provide us with some tips and resources as we go on this entrepreneurship journey. Hi, Andrea. Thank you so much for joining me today and being open to sharing your experience and your insight when it comes to trademarking. Can you please share with our listeners, a majority of them being military spouses here, a little bit about you, what you do, as well as your business?
Hi, yes, I'm so happy to be here. I'm Andrea Sager. I have been helping entrepreneurs navigate the legal side of their business for 7 years now. I legitimately just had my 7 year anniversary, which is crazy to think about because I started in big law and had the big fancy dream job and thought I was set for life. Very quickly realized this is miserable. I hate it here and had to figure out how to get out of big law when
Hmm.
I was the only breadwinner in my family. And I always say I manifested getting fired because they ended up letting me go and I got a nice little severance package and I started my law firm that same day. And Andrea Sager Law was created to help entrepreneurs. And then we created Legalpreneur, which is our DIY legal resource side of things to reach even more entrepreneurs no matter where they are in business. So the law firm, if you want to file a trademark, that's absolutely what it's for. And Legalpreneur, if you want to file your LLC, get trademarks, we have our trademark course, we have our contract templates, all the other legal stuff that you need, Legalpreneur can help you with.
Thank you. And that's amazing to know that a platform exists because a lot of us are pretty new. We don't know where to go. We are being told different things, or we're looking at the prices of some things and it's not within our budget. So I do want to congratulate you on your anniversary slash what
Thank
business
you.
birthday.
Thank
I do know
you.
you have something going on right now for that. So I do want to make sure you have time to talk about that a little bit as well. For those of us that are starting out our business, again, entrepreneurship, military spouses, can you explain what a trademark is and why it matters, why it's crucial?
Yeah, so trademarks and even intellectual property as a whole, I always tell entrepreneurs IP, intellectual property, it is likely your business's most valuable asset. And that's whether you sell goods or if you have services. Either way, your most valuable asset likely is IP. So you want to make sure that you are aware of what IP you have and how to make sure that it is protected. So IP is patents, trademarks, and copyrights. Patents are new inventions, not something that I cover, but if you ever need a patent attorney, I can definitely make a recommendation. And then trademarks, this is your brand identity, your brand name, your logo, your slogan, a product name, anything that has a unique name within your company, it can likely be protected with a trademark. And then for your copyrights, this is your content, your photos, your videos, your blog posts, your podcast episodes, your website copy, your social media captions, any content that you're consistently creating, that is likely protected with a copyright.
Thank you. And so if I was new, right, and I'm starting this journey and I'm doing all the copyright, can I just put the symbol on there and call it good? Or do I really need to go through an attorney before I put copyright this, trademark that, or TM symbols on all of my information?
Yeah, great question. So when it comes to the copyrights, your protection is automatic. Then this is only for copyrights. The moment you create the work, you automatically have a federal copyright. So you can use the C symbol. That can be used as long as the content is unique and creative enough. So any blog post, if and now the question does we don't have to get into too many details, but there it is
Okay.
questionable as to whether if you create a blog post using AI, is that
Yeah.
protected with a copyright? That really what is the driving force there is was, did a human create it?
Right.
So that's really what you're up against when it comes to using AI and having IP
Mm,
protection. Now, when it comes to trademarks, it is not automatic. You do have to have a federal trademark registration in order to have rights. So I typically tell clients your money's way better spent on a trademark application rather than a copyright application.
mhm.
Now, whether you have a trademark registration or you've submitted an application, you can use the TM symbol. The TM means that you claim to have trademark rights. It does not mean that you do have trademark rights. When you are registered, you do have the federal trademark registration, you can use the R circle symbol. And if
Okay.
you're eligible for that, that's what you definitely want to use because that
Mhm.
does mean you do have the exclusive right to use it.
Oh, good to know. Good to know. I feel like a lot of us think that if we smack it on there, we're good.
Yeah.
We're protecting everything that we've built, and that is clearly and simply not the case. So, my next question, what are the things that we can get trademarked? And are there common misconceptions that you have heard of or you've run into of what we can protect under our trademark?
Yeah, so overarching, you can protect any unique brand identifier. So if it identifies your brand and it's unique, it can likely be protected with a trademark. The most common are your brand name, your logo, your slogan, a podcast name, a product name, a service name. Anything with a unique name can be protected. Um, what cannot be protected is if it's not used for commercial purposes. So a lot of
Mm.
times we'll say somebody may come up with a catchy phrase or something, and we've all heard it. Somebody's like, "Oh, you should trademark that."
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you actually cannot trademark it unless it is used for commercial purposes, meaning in business. So make sure you're using it for commercial purposes. Another big misconception is a t-shirt quote, like a phrase on a
Yes.
t-shirt.
Yes.
They can get some limited protection, but I will say it is harder and harder to get those approved. And I don't want to say it's like an empty trademark, but if you get it approved, it is harder to enforce. So
Okay.
if there's trademark infringement, it could be harder to enforce. There's a lot in there, especially with those
Yeah.
t-shirt quotes. So that is something you definitely want to chat with an attorney about, but that's
Mhm.
enough to get your gears running.
Yes, it does. Yeah. And I know t-shirts, a lot of spouses do create either some type of shirt or some type of product, and we sell it to either an installation or to other spouses or companies. And so it is good to know that, hey, that's a little bit harder when it comes to trademarking and protecting. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
How early would you say in your business or in a person's business journey should they start thinking or should we start thinking about protecting our brand legally? And is it ever too early to do that?
Great question. So I have to say it's probably never too early. Even if
Okay.
you have not launched your business yet, you
Okay.
can because you can file what's called an intent to use application for a trademark. So if you have this great business idea, this great business name that you want to use, but you haven't yet launched, you can file the application to essentially reserve the name. And
Okay.
that's used, we file those all the time because clients are, in the beginning stages of preparing their business. They just haven't launched to the public. And we want to make sure that they do have that protection as soon as possible. So you can absolutely file that intent to use application at any time. And as far as like how small or how big your business is, I work with very micro businesses. I work with businesses of all sizes, but I do also work with very small micro businesses. And
Hmm.
I always tell them like, do not send me your last, $2,000 to file a trademark instead of feeding your family. That's not what this is about. But just understand that the sooner you file, the sooner you're going to have peace of mind, the sooner that you're going to be able to enforce your trademark, you're going to be able to protect your brand. So I'm not going to tell you to spend your last dollar on a trademark application. However, just understand that the sooner you do have that registration, the sooner you have power to enforce it. And the great thing about a federal trademark registration is once you have that, you actually don't even have to hire a lawyer to enforce it. So
Okay.
my favorite tool to use online for entrepreneurs, and we do this all the time for clients, you can do it on your own, is submitting takedowns. Now, submitting these takedowns, you can do them for copyrights or trademarks.
Okay.
Copyrights, you can do them at any time because remember, you automatically have those federal copyright rights. Trademarks, same process. You can submit these takedowns, but you have to have the federal trademark registration.
Ah,
And so if
that's what
you
they give you.
find, yes, yes, yes. And so that's really the power of a federal trademark registration. And even 10, 15 years ago, I would say more old school attorneys would normally say, like, oh, if you're a small business, don't worry about a trademark because you're not going to sue anybody to enforce it, which I would say was probably true. However, with everybody being online, you need that trademark
Yes.
registration to enforce it online. And you don't even have to get a lawyer involved when you
Mhm.
do go to enforce it. You just need to have the registration.
So with you talking about the intent to use, how long is that good for? Like if I file an intent to use, but maybe I'm not going to be up and running until 5 or 10 years later, do I have to refile it or how long am I safe if I were to do something
Yeah.
like that? Yeah.
So maybe if you're 5 to 10 years out, that might
Yeah.
be too soon to file
Okay.
because so once we go through the whole application process and we're looking at about a year. And then once you finish that and you're approved, you get what's called a notice of allowance. And the trademark office is saying, like, hey, you've been approved up to this point. We just need you to submit your usage and then we can finalize the registration.
Okay.
If you and you have 6 months to submit it. If you're not ready within that 6 months, you can pay to extend for another 6 months. And then you can do those extensions up to 3 years. So I would
Okay.
say if you're looking outside of launching outside of the 3 or 4 year mark, I probably would wait.
Okay, good to know. See, so it's
Hmm.
5, 10 years, maybe too much, but that helps to kind of put us in a bubble and a timeline as well. So
Yeah.
for military spouses, we're often moved frequently. We're all over the map. Sometimes we're
Hmm.
stateside, sometimes we're overseas. So
Hmm.
what legal challenges or advantages should we be aware of when trademarking or protecting the work that we have across state lines as well as when we do go overseas?
Yeah, so what's really helpful to know when you're a military spouse, and by the way, I was in the military, my ex-husband was military, so I'm very familiar with what you all go through. So one thing we haven't touched on too much is an LLC.
Hmm.
Your LLC that you always want to have that in your business as soon as possible because that protects you personally from the debts of your company. With the LLC, you'll file in one state. And then as you move around, you will file as a foreign entity in the states where you're actually living. And that's to be in
Okay.
compliance with those state laws, give them notice like, hey, I have this LLC in this state, but I am currently conducting business here in this state. And when it comes to trademarks, if you're not online, it is helpful to actually move around because in order to be eligible for a federal trademark, you have to be doing business in more than one state.
Okay.
And if you're online, it's a lot easier to meet that. Let's say you sell clothing at local markets and you've been in one state, but then you move to another state. When you're in the original state, you may not be eligible for a federal trademark, but once you move and you're doing business in multiple states, that's what makes you eligible.
Okay. So then you have to go through a whole filing for the federal trademark side,
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what is the difference between trademark, copyright, and patent? I know when I
Yeah.
first heard about these, I was like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah.
what am I protecting? Words or symbols? And I know you touched
Yeah.
on trademark can help the name or in certain symbols
Hmm.
and everything, but can you just go into a little bit more detail of that and then
Hmm.
how each plays a role for entrepreneurs in creating that content in our products that we work so hard on?
Yeah. So patents are inventions of new things. I can't give many more details than that. I honestly,
Okay.
you don't want to hear about patents from me.
Okay.
But just know that they are inventions. Now, trademarks and copyrights, every entrepreneur likely has both. And if you are an online entrepreneur, you're selling courses, your social media photos, your course content, if you have a podcast, your podcast episodes, all of that is copyrights. And remember, you
Okay.
automatically have copyright protection the moment the work is created. Now, the name of your podcast is a trademark. The name of
Okay.
your course is a trademark. The name of your business is a trademark. So here's one, a book. If you have a book, the name of the book is not a trademark unless it's a series of books. So there has to be
Ah,
more than one book there,
okay.
and then it can be protected with a trademark. But one book, not a trademark.
Okay,
When
I was gonna say with books that goes more in the realm of like copyright protection and okay.
Mhm.
How about if it
Yep.
was a book, right? So I'm bringing a scenario to you. I have a book, let's say, and I have artwork that's all throughout there. Does the copyright protect the art too, or do I need to get something separate from the artwork that's in there?
So the book as a whole, all the content inside is a copyright.
Okay.
The artwork, whoever does the illustrations, if you hire an illustrator, it depends on what's in the contract with the
Okay.
author and the illustrator,
Hmm.
but the illustrations themselves are copyrights.
Okay.
It Who owns them by default law, the illustrator would own it, and this is assuming you have a separate illustrator. If you're the
Hmm.
illustrator, you own the copyright to the artwork as well. The artwork created by an illustrator, though, by default law, the illustrator owns it unless the
Okay.
contract says the author is purchasing all the rights, all the copyright rights.
All right, good to know. So that fine print within the contracts have to pay attention to.
Exactly.
All
Yes.
right, thank you. So another question I have for you, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see for new business owners that they make when it comes to protecting our intellectual property?
The number one mistake is trademarks. And it's not filing a trademark necessarily, but it's not understanding what trademark infringement is.
Okay.
So, infringement is not just when it's the same exact name, it can be when there's anything similar enough to where consumers are likely to be confused. So, really, that's those similar names, that's what gets entrepreneurs in trouble. And so, for example, my law firm is Andrea Sager Law, and by the way, legal names also need to be protected. So if you have
Okay.
a personal brand, you definitely need to trademark your legal name.
Okay.
So my law firm is Andrea Sager Law. If there is another law firm out there with Andrew Sager or Seeger law firm and associates, any variation thereof, that is trademark infringement. Now, if there is Andrea Sager, the handbag company,
Uh-huh.
that is not infringement because it's not likely that my clients, my law firm clients, think that I would own a handbag company. And my clients aren't going to go buy an Andrea Sager handbag thinking that they're buying my legal services or thinking that
Okay.
it's mine. So it's comparing the names and
Mm-hmm.
the goods and services.
Oh, interesting. And I think that's good to know because many of us as military spouses, we always have military wife,
Yeah.
soldier life, Navy this, or whatever
Hmm.
the branch may be. And so I realize some things can start to get sticky with
Hmm.
the names and titles. And so that is good to keep in mind and be mindful of when people are creating these new organizations or new businesses. So thank you. And
Yeah.
my next question has to do with the basic steps. So, can you walk us through the basic steps of trademarking a business name or a logo and how complicated or expensive we can expect it to be in the process?
Yeah, so going through the process I take my clients through in the law firm, the first step is doing a search. And some people want to push back on doing the search. They're like, oh, I already did my search. But you honestly just don't know how to find those
Right.
similar marks.
Yeah.
And it's nothing against you. I tell people all the time, like, do your search, but come, like, don't bring me a name and without doing your own basic search because you don't want to
Right.
pay me to find something that you could have found on your own.
Hmm.
So you want to come to me thinking that you have a good name and then let me do the real digging to find those similar names that you potentially couldn't find or wouldn't think to be infringement. So we do that search. It takes usually no more than a week and then from there we file the application. When we file the application, that starts the timer of at least 14 months. Right now, the
Okay.
trademark office is way behind. They've been
Yeah.
behind since COVID,
Yeah.
and they're probably not going to catch up anytime soon. So just expect it's going to be over a year from the day you file your trademark to the day you're registered. Now, when it comes to your timeline, when you file, you're waiting the first 9 months. You're not going to hear anything from the trademark office. And then after about 9 months, you'll get a yes or no from the trademark office. Yes, that means you're approved so far and you move on.
Hmm.
A no is, hey, here's these refusals or a refusal of why you're not approved. And then you have an opportunity to overcome the refusals. Very normal. It's not the end of the world if you get a refusal. So then you take the time to overcome the refusal. And then if you get the yes from there, you move on to publication. Publication is where you're listed on the trademark database for 30 days.
Okay.
And essentially, any third party in the world can come look at this list of upcoming trademarks. And they can look at the list. And if they believe their brand will be damaged by any of these becoming registered, they have to file what's called an opposition. An opposition is essentially a lawsuit within the trademark office. And it is
Okay.
very rare. It's very rare
Hmm.
that one is ever filed, but it happens.
Yeah.
It does happen. I've honestly, we have filed probably 1,100, 1,200 applications, and we've had like 5 or 10 filed
Okay.
ever. So very, very, very low
Yes.
risk. And then after that 30 days, as long as nobody has filed an opposition, you'll be registered about 11 weeks after that.
Oh wow! And I know that's when everyone gets their letter, everyone's
Yeah,
excited. Feels official when you have that protection in
exactly.
hand. So my question to follow that, and it has to stem more with you and your business and your organization. Do you recommend working with an attorney when you're filing a trademark, or is a DIY service sufficient for beginners? And if not, what would set your organization apart from other organizations that do the
Yeah.
same?
Yeah, so I'm always a proponent of, hey, if you're a DIYer, like I'm never going to tell you not to do it on your own.
Yeah.
Everything is figure outable. However, I will say it is getting harder and harder to DIY trademarks, especially if you're not
Hmm.
familiar with the process. We do have our DIY trademark course with Legalpreneur, so that's absolutely available. We walk you through the whole process, teach you everything to file on your own. And what's helpful there is if you know you're going to have a number of trademarks you want to file, you may
Yeah.
want to take the course and really learn it for your whole business. That way you can just continue filing without paying attorney fees.
Yeah.
Now, if you are doing your own searching and you know like, okay, this does not look as clear as I thought it would, or I think there might be some issues, you probably want to work with a lawyer, because the last thing you want to do is wait a year thinking you're going to get registered and then you don't. And so there are times where you may just still want to work with a lawyer. And if you're not a DIYer, absolutely just pay the experts to do it. So my law firm, we've, like I said, we've been around for 7 years. The reason we do so well is because of number one, of the search that we do. I'm not going
Hmm.
to file an application that I know is not going to get approved. And because of that, our approval rate is 98%. And our applications get approved over 4 months faster than the average. And I am ranked number 22 out of 40,000 trademark attorneys in the United States. So definitely know what I'm doing when it comes to
Yes.
trademarks. Definitely my jam. I love trademarks. I love working with small businesses and trademarks, just because I know that the power that comes with a trademark registration. And I used to work in big law in the big fancy office, and I just saw the disadvantage that small businesses had because they didn't have
Yeah.
anybody to turn to. And that's honestly why I started my firm, because I had small businesses coming to me and realized like, hey, they don't have anybody to serve them, because my big firm didn't want to serve these small businesses. And I said, okay, well, why not me? And here I am 7 years later.
Yes, I love it because it's like you're that advocate. You're the one that's like, I'll help the
Hmm.
small businesses. Like, I'll get
Hmm.
you where you
Yep.
need to be. So thank you for that, and thank you for sharing more about the courses that you offer for those DIYers. I had no idea like any any of trademark and copyright, and so that is why I worked with you personally on my brand and in assistance. It was just
Yeah.
maybe later I'll learn and take everything, but right now I need a professional to
Yep.
take this load and stress off me. So, my last question for you, if you could give one legal must do for every new entrepreneur or military spouse launching a business, what would it be and why?
File your LLC as soon as possible. Like, ignore the people that say, oh, don't worry about the LLC until you're making a certain dollar amount. Ignore that and file your LLC. First, the LLC is a limited liability company. It is there to limit you as an individual, limit your personal liability from the debts of your company. Even if you don't have assets, even if you don't have debts right now, you have to protect yourself now against what you may acquire in the future. And if you file the LLC 6 months from now, you can still be held personally liable for anything that happened before you file that LLC. So if you are a
Mm,
business owner, you need the LLC ASAP.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I know we often do hear like LLC, LLC, and some of us are like, okay, do we need that? And what all are we putting LLC
Mhm.
on? So thank you for that insight. And thank
You're
you again
welcome.
for joining me today at the desk of a Navy
Thank you.
wife and talking to all our military spouses here that have tuned in. If you're starting off your entrepreneurship journey, I do have links to the Legalpreneur located in my description of this episode. And I'll also have it throughout my blog and well as my website, deskofanavy.com. Andrea, would you like to say anything to our listeners?
Thank you so much. And don't be afraid to tackle this legal stuff. I promise you, when you tackle it head on, it is not intimidating. It is not scary. It is only scary when you wait too long. When you get that cease and desist letter, that's when it's scary and you've waited too long.
Thank you all again for tuning in this week. I look forward to bringing you resources, support, and laughter. Sending my love from the desk of a Navy wife.